It's the first song every guitar player ever learns, am I right?
Yeah, and they usually learn it wrong. They go, but he played it here.
Yeah,
Weak.
It is weak.
I played on 𝙏𝘼𝙆𝙆𝙆𝙆𝙆, a solo in the beginning of the song. Everybody is always confused. They're like, did you play the Bumblebee part? No, like that's the intro. Like, you can't just be a guy that can play any bass stuff. You have to do that for like 15 years to be able to get to the point where you can play one of his songs. Whether you like it or not, that's what's required. And it's part of the big box set for Deep Purple, so that was a really fun thing. But it's like, sometimes in life you have these little interconnecting things, and that song, Smoke on the Water, is as many times as people have heard it, I would say probably maybe like 75% of the people don't know that the song's about something that happened at one of my dad's concerts. So they hear the lyrics, but it doesn't click. And then you go, oh yeah, you know, the actual building burned down because somebody shot a flare gun into the ceiling. They're like, oh, is that really what happened? You're like, I didn't know what the lyric really was. It's like, it's literally telling you some stupid with a flare gun burned the place to the ground. And my dad's concert was stopped. The equipment was all destroyed. They actually had to throw some of the equipment through some windows to help get people out of the building in time because it was burning so fast.
Wow, dude. Again, adds to the legacy. You're part of the, arguably the biggest song in rock and roll history. I mean, it's the first song every guitar player ever learns, am I right?
Yeah, and they usually learn it wrong.
And they butcher, I was going to say,
they go like this. They go, but he played it here. It's way fatter and heavier there, you know, so.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Weak.
It is weak.
Yeah,
that's the noob way to do it. The
Yeah.
pro way to do it is what you just showed.
Yeah.
Guitar teachers, wake up. That's how it's done. All right.
Yeah.
There's probably about 1,000 guitar teachers in the U.S. right now teaching that version.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah. That's great. So going back to that album for you though, right? Confessions of a Deprived Youth, right?
Yeah.
So you go back and listen to that. Nuno produced it with you. Mm-hmm. I can hear Gary Cherone singing on it too. Right?
Yeah, well, the band Extreme they hadn't broken yet.
That's true. It was right. It was same year as Porno Graffiti, but this was probably recorded maybe before that, right?
So they just finished Porno Graffiti maybe a week earlier. I played on 𝙏𝘼𝙆𝙆𝙆𝙆𝙆, a solo in the beginning of the song. Everybody is always confused. They're like, did you play the Bumblebee part? No, like that's the intro. But when the song starts, you hear a solo that's mixed very quietly in the mix. In the front part of the song, that's me. But after they finished, then we had 2 weeks to make the Confessions record. Nuno stayed in town, and then we made this record. But the other guys sang background, so we kind of, it was all the Extreme guys except Paul Geary. He wasn't really singing with the band. He was playing the drums. But all the Extreme guys were the main background vocalists on the record. But that record also has other guests on it. You know, Zakk Wylde's on there, Steve Lukather, Tim Pierce. Who else played on?
Zakk Wylde's on this tour. So look at all these years later.
Yeah.
You guys on the same bill together. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's kind of what life is anyway. There's touchstone moments, and they all sort of interconnect. It's like some kind of a solar system in some way. And, you know, most of these guys that were great players then are still great players now. And it's fun to just catch up, and all the same influences that we had that made us do what we want to do have never really changed. You know, we get exposed to other kinds of music and we like different styles of things. But when it gets right down to it, you talk to anybody that's into shredding guitar, you know, they could be into it as a kid, and then 30 years later, 40 years later, they can still connect to what that is because there's something about it that it changed their perspective of life, and it made them into the person that they are. But the attention to detail of what it takes to actually be able to do those things, whether somebody likes the music or not, you can't deny that somebody has built incredible talent to be able to have that facility to do the thing. Like, you can't just be a guy that can play 𝙏𝘼𝙇 stuff. You have to do that for like 15 years to be able to get to the point where you could play one of his songs. Whether you like it or not, that's what's required.
Right.
You know, so I think that's one of the things about guitar playing that, and guitar players in general, they definitely, the ones that like the solo style of guitar, they are detail oriented and they're willing to put the time in to actually acquire the skill. So there's something to that in terms of a life lesson or a life goal. You know, if you have it in your head that you can visualize it and you say, I'm going to do this, whatever it is, you know, it's great when somebody just says, okay, I'm going to go fully into this. And some people look at it like, oh, that's lame, you know, like who cares about what that skill is? Well, you can be the greatest chef in the world. You could do whatever it is that you need to do. You got to put the time in to do
Right.
it. There's going to be somebody that likes what that thing is. It might not always be the thing that makes you have the comfortable financial lifestyle, but if you go full forward into the thing that you love, I'm all for it, you know?
Yeah. So let me ask you something about that album and that part of your life. Would you ever consider taking that on a small tour again?
I don't think anybody would want to see it, so it's not really, you know, when it comes to financial decisions, and you know, people don't realize how difficult it is to put on a tour. So for me, a tour that I would do playing my dad's music, which also has a limited audience, but it has at least a limited audience that we have been able to identify, and you can create numbers that say, okay, if we do this kind of business, this thing is sustainable. But first off, a bus right now, a bus that tows a trailer is going to be over $100,000 a month. So you got to pay a band and crew, you got to have hotels, you got to do all these things, you have all these expenses, and if you as the artist aren't earning enough money to sustain that stuff, you'll just lose money. So there's no reason to go out on a tour if you can't bring in enough money to make it worth it. So that's the nuts and bolts of it. It's very, very difficult to make tours actually be successful, and even more so if you have something like a shutdown or, you know, a pandemic type of thing that you have no control over, and then insurance doesn't cover.
Right.
So, you know, it's a big risk. So for me to do something that has a very limited appeal, even though it might be fun, I don't think it would work.
What if it was one night only at one venue that was heavily promoted and you just flew in for it?
It just wouldn't work because it wouldn't make enough money to warrant the rehearsals and the flying people in and paying people to do the thing, because it just logistically it would be too expensive.
You know, there's a lot of musicians in Nashville we can get for a backup band. Just saying, for the backing band, we might be able to pull something off.
Yeah, well, I don't know. You know, it's
Just a thought.
yeah, I think it's just it's too limited appeal. You know, this is the kind of thing where if I really wanted to do some market research and I was like, okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to think about doing this. The only way we could make this work is if we did like a pre-sale thing and we said, okay, if we hit this number, so we know we can pay everybody for musicians having to rehearse and whatever, maybe, but I don't think anybody's ever done like a fundraising
Ticket
thing.
pre-order.
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
You know, so it's, you know, maybe something like that. But I have limited faith that it would be of interest.
I might have to look into that a little bit more when we're done with this. The ultimate addition to your shred den has arrived. Masters of Shred has teamed up with Sam Hill Customs to create the ultimate tribute to arguably one of the greatest rock bands to ever walk the planet with our limited edition Super Halen 1x12 Soldano amp. Each 1x12 cabinet and matching Soldano head housing is scientifically crafted with the highest grade materials to give you that monstrous tone that will light up the sky. You can be confident that your Super Halen amplifier is 100% authentic and truly one of a kind. Hand draped in the pages of a vintage 1990 Van Halen comic book, no two Super Halen amps are the same. Each Super Halen cabinet is loaded with a 12-inch warehouse guitar speakers Green Beret 25-watt speaker hand-built in the USA, which is a massive upgrade from the Celestion G12M greenbacks that we have become so accustomed to. Visit www.mastersofshred today to reserve your Super Halen amp before you can't get this stuff no more.